1 year ago, in November 2010, I was invited by the Free Voters in Frankfurt. This is a regional political organization independent of the established parties, to speak on Islam and its compatibility with Western civilization. What you hear now is the English translation of what I have said then, and I use the opportunity to present my book Das Dschihadsystem, in English the Jihad system, which will, as I hope, be soon available in English. The speech took 1 hour, and what you hear is an excerpt of about 15 minutes. Islam understands itself as a comprehensive way of life, and to us living in the West, it is hardly to imagine what implications and what consequences this has. This is the reason why I wrote my book. It is often said and generally known that Islam has not experienced secularization, but it is seldom asked why this is the case and which consequences this may have. Culture means a set of values and norms that enables people to live together peacefully in one and the same society. We needn't necessarily have the same norms and values as the Mexican or the Indian society, because the principle is different countries, different customs. But when you establish a multicultural society, the principle is no longer different countries, different customs, but same country, different customs. That's to say, we have two societies in one, and two societies in which different patterns of values and norms are accepted and applied. This does not necessarily mean they are incompatible with each other, for we see that there are people from Asia, from China, from Vietnam living in Germany who form their communities on their own without causing major problems to our German society, at least so far. When we look at Muslim immigrants, it's different. We have a rate of crime and violence above average. Success in education is below average. The dependence on social welfare is higher, and we have a strong tendency towards political extremism in a way that is different from other immigrant groups. Question is why? Written law can contain only things that are forbidden and that are to be applied to individuals and their individual actions. They do not contain norms and values and even truths that shape our daily behavior. And this kind of norms is what holds the society together. Where do these norms and value systems come from? And my thesis is that they come from, in a much more than we are aware of, from the religion. That's to say, in Muslim societies, they stem from Islam, and in our society, from Christianity. The best confirmation of this fact comes from those liberal and left-wing do-gooders who, for themselves, have rejected Christianity. If you criticize Islam in the presence of one of those people, their immediate reaction is to say, yes, this may be true, but on the other hand, you must think that the church, that Christianity is not better, because there were the Crusades, and there were the burning of witches, and the church was authoritarian. And the question is, why does he say so? Because it has nothing to do with the issue of Islam. Well, he does say so, because he has the principle, don't point to the splinter in the eyes of your brother as long as you have the beam in your own eye, and don't judge for don't being judged. In other words, he has internalized Christian ethics. In other words, he wouldn't use these arguments to criticize Christianity. He uses if he hadn't been socialized in a society that conveys to him the Christian value system. The norms and values internalized by a society have a much longer life than the religion to which they owe their existence. The central idea of Islamic theology is the almightiness of God, and this thought is not relativated by the idea that man is created in the image of God. Man is just a creature and nothing else, and therefore Allah is responsible for human nature. This implies that Islam affirms the institutions that Muhammad found in the 7th century, including those which are, in our view, rather questionable. Slavery, for example, was believed to have ever existed, and therefore Islam does not abolish and not reject slavery, but he makes regulations of slavery according to the will of Allah. Accordingly, Muhammad led 27 campaigns, and you cannot say, of course, there's anything un-Islamic with it. This leads to a completely different perception of the world. The world as it is not something to be improved, but is seen as something that is fundamentally in harmony with the will of Allah. Our concept of progress, based on the idea that the world has to be improved, is foreign to Islam. Of course, they want to improve it in the sense that Islam may be spread, but not in the sense that something like progress is necessary. Islam does not entirely reject violence, but makes regulations how violence is to be applied, who is allowed to do so, and on whom violence is to be applied. It is a legal system, fundamentally, providing norms that regulate violence, and this implies that an autonomous state is not required for the working of an Islamic society. This does, of course, not imply that Islam is always preaching violence. That it does imply that it does not reject violence in the fundamental sense as something evil, but that it allows violence as long as the right people apply violence to those who deserve it according to Islamic law. We Westerners believe that the rejection of violence is at the core of a society that is good in the moral sense of the word. Nobody could imagine that a Christian preacher would preach in the way Ayatollah Khomeini did, whom I'm going to quote now. He did so on the occasion of the Prophet's birthday, 1981. Khomeini said, "Quran says, kill, imprison, mercy is against God. Mihrab, the prayer niche in the mosque, means the place of war, the place of fighting. Out of the mihrabs, war should proceed, just as all wars of Islam used to proceed out of the mihrabs. The Prophet had a sword to kill people. Our Imams were quite military men. All of them were warriors. They used to wield swords. They used to kill people. We need a Khalifa who would chop hands, cut throats, stone people, in the same way that the messenger of God used to chop hands, cut throats, and stone people, in the same way that he massacred the Jews of Bani Qurayza because they were a bunch of discontented people. If the Prophet used to order to burn a house and to exterminate a tribe, that was justice." This was a sermon on the occasion of the Prophet's birthday. That's to say, transferred to a Christian context, it was a Christmas address. I emphasize that not all Muslims think and behave in this way, but you cannot say such a sermon to be un-Islamic, because in a certain way Khomeini is right. It is true that the mosques were the starting point of the armed jihad against other peoples, and it is true that Muhammad engaged in campaigns, and it is true that he did exterminate a Jewish tribe. And this is nothing what historians critical of Islam have found out. We know it from the Islamic tradition, and we have seen that Islamic preachers are agreeing to that attitude to violence. For Khomeini is not suspect to be a critic of Islam. This attitude is based on the fundamental decision of Quran to split mankind into the believers and the infidel. The original Muslim community of Medina was a fighting community, aiming at submitting the infidels. So if you couldn't proselytize them, they should at least submit to Muslim rule and pay tribute to the Muslims. A sermon like that of Ayatollah Khomeini couldn't be understood without knowing this background. From an Islamic point of view, the natural state of man is to be a Muslim, and those who are not have not just another faith, but they have actively rejected their very human nature being a Muslim. This means that unbelievers are apostates because they have actively rejected Islam, and as they have thereby rejected their human nature, which has been approved by Allah. This is not being a Muslim means to Muslims something like to us very evil sexual perversion. You must be aware that there is a deep contempt of non-believers among Muslims, and the roots of this contempt is this attitude to religion as such. So Islam splits mankind into a hierarchy of superior and inferior beings, and with the Muslims at the top of it. So we are dealing with an ideology which is racist in the sense that it makes dependent the value of a human being from its belonging to a certain group. The word jihad is often translated as holy war, and the defenders of Islam object, and they are right, that this is a simplified translation. Jihad means anything a Muslim does for Islam. That's to say, either by deepening and living his faith, or by spreading Islam. Any effort a Muslim makes on the way of Allah is jihad. Insofar, the defenders of Islam are right. What they conceal is that in Quran, and especially in the surahs of Medina, which are deciding in case of doubt, the emphasis is clearly on the military, on jihad in the military sense of the word. It is important to know that the Islamic definition of law and legitimacy is different from ours. The Prophet Muhammad, by establishing a theocratic state in Medina, at the same time laid the foundations for what Muslims see as a good and an order, good social order. A state is legitimate when ruled in harmony with the will of Allah, and that's to say, in harmony with the Islamic rule. In the Western world, legitimacy means that a set of rules is applied when to decide who is to rule, and this set of rules is agreed upon by the society, be it a democratic rule that the ruler is replaced by elections, or a monarchy that he is followed by his son when he dies. That's to say, we have a formal definition of legitimacy. Legitimacy in Islam does not mean that an abstract rule is applied, but that the definition of legitimacy is material. That's to say, regardless of whether the ruler is an elected politician or a king or a dictator, his rule has to be in harmony with Islam. This implies that the Muslim ruler is legitimate and the non-Muslim ruler isn't. The principle is that Islam rules and isn't ruled upon. Accordingly to the definition of what is law differs between the West and the Islamic world. To us, law is what a legitimate lawmaking body has established. To Muslims, law is something given by Allah. It is not something you can change. It's something you have to submit to. And this is a major problem because democracy is based on the idea that law is to be negotiated in a lawmaking body. I don't say that Muslims can never be democrats, but I do say that fundamental opposition and even political extremism is to be expected to arise from Muslim parallel societies in the West. Not any Muslim is an extremist, and not any Muslim is against democracy, but this ideology makes sure that there will be a high level of political extremism in such parallel societies.